Yes guys, welcome back to the Asian One-to-One Football Coaching channel. I'm Coach Indy and we're actually going to be starting a new segment on the channel called the Premier League Appetiser Show. We couldn't call it the Premier League Preview Show because of copyright issues. So essentially what we're going to be doing on the Premier League Appetiser Show is give you a rundown of all the Premier League fixtures for that game week, have a look at the manager head-to-heads, see if there's any interesting battles or any history there. Also looking at any topics surrounding those fixtures, and then possibly I'll throw in some stats in there. I do like some stats, so that'll probably be happening as well. Before we get stuck into that, if you're new to the channel, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment saying what you liked about this video. Like I said guys, it's a new segment, let me know what you think. So before we get stuck into Project Restart, I'm absolutely buzzing that the Premier League starting again. There's a few topics I just want to just talk about, that certain things may have changed or certain things might affect players or clubs going into this period or during this period that might have an effect. So there's four things I want to talk about. First thing is there's a list of players that haven't extended their contract for whatever reason, whether it be the club don't want to or the player doesn't want to either. So there's a huge list, probably close to 100 players, I would probably say off the top of my head, but I've got sort of about 30 to 40 here, which I'll just read off a few of them. You've got Fraser, Jordan Ives, Sermon, Daniels, Francis, Hendrick, Westwood, Hart, Lennon, Barsley, Willian, Pedro, Baines, Fuchs, Morgan, Klein, Silva, Bravo, Carroll, Matty Longstaff, Lundstrom, Lord Lundstrom, Jagielka, Rodwell, Long, Vertonghen, Tanganga, Vorm, Foster, Gomez, Holebas, Mariappa and Zabaleta. So that's about 30 to 40 players I've just reeled off there. And like I said, there's plenty more. So between now and so these players' contracts run out on the 30th of June, so in effectively 15 days time. Now if the player wants to sign a contract and the club agree to it, or the club want them to sign a contract and the player agrees to it, to extend, so we're talking about the extension of, so we can finish the Premier League season. These have to be done and signed by the 23rd of June. So effectively a week from now and a week prior to the end of their original contract. I'm assuming that's just to make sure all the formalities or the paperwork just runs smoothly, and if there was any hiccups it gives them a bit of time to adjust any paperwork. Second thing I want to talk about is of the players' contracts that run out, there's only actually one player that I've noticed, and I've done a bit of recon on this, that has agreed to extend his contract, and that's Adam Lallana. So he's agreed to stay for the next 9 games, and when I thought about this sort of throughout the week, I thought to myself, well, he's probably not going to play. They've got everyone fit. You've got Henderson, Fabinho, Wijnaldum, Chamberlain, and others probably that can play in that position as well. But then I thought actually he probably, Liverpool going to win the Premier League, so he probably wants to stick around, and probably there'll be a bit of rotation then, and he might get some minutes, and he probably want to be there for in the city during this sort of 9-game period. Once they've won the league, it's just going to be probably epic scenes. So I can understand it from that point of view. He probably thought actually I will stay around. So next thing I want to talk about is there's a certain amount of players. There's actually 20 players that either have agreed or yet to agree extending their loan periods at Premier League clubs. So these players could be either from Premier League to Premier League, so i.e. Danny Rose from Spurs to Newcastle, or foreign players coming into the Premier League, like Igalo for example. So I'll just give you a few examples. So I've mentioned Igalo and Danny Rose already. Both of them have agreed with both clubs. Obviously the players agreed for their extension to be extended, their contract to be extended, sorry. Igalo's extended his contract to the end of January 2021, which is good news for Manchester United fans. And Danny Rose has agreed until the end of the season for now. Then you've got a few others like Harry Wilson, that's not been agreed. He's obviously at Bournemouth from Liverpool. Gelson Fernandez, he's at Spurs at the moment. Got Sidibe, Everton right back. Nothing's been agreed there. And then you've got Dean Henderson, who's a Sheffield goalkeeper, who's on loan for Manchester United. Now I did hear a little while, sort of earlier on today, that Dean Wilder has been in talks with Solskjaer, and it's apparently a formality. So in the next couple of days, that agreement will be, well, both clubs will agree, and Henson will agree for him to stay until the end of the season. But I'm not sure what's happening beyond that. Next thing I want to talk about is substitution. So the current law is you can make up to 3 substitutions, and you can make them at 3 separate occasions, and obviously in half time as well if you want to. So that law has now changed. So the football's international lawmakers have allowed competitions the option to change the quantity of subs, which the Premier League have agreed. So I'll go into a bit more detail now. But all 20 clubs agree to this, which is, it kind of all makes sense once you bear in mind they haven't played football for 3 months. There's going to be a lot of injuries, fatigue, going into the summer of UK, although it's not normally that hot, but nevertheless they've come out of a sort of a colder period, so that could play a part as well. So Premier League clubs are now allowed to name 9 substitutions. They're also allowed to make up to 5 substitutions, but those 5 substitutions have to be made only on 3 separate occasions, excluding half time. So effectively, the reason why they've done that is so to minimise sort of disruption and sort of the rhythm and the flow of the game, and also from a tactical point of view, there could be managers taking advantage of the situation. You know, if the game's tight, just sort of winding the clock down by making another sub and another sub. And also, players are cute in this day and age as well. They could go down and fake an injury and pretend that way as well, and then eventually make a sub. So I think there was a smart decision and from the lawmakers and obviously the Premier League to agree all of that combined. The last thing I want to talk about is there's obviously 92 games left of the Premier League this season from the 19-20 season, and it's a bit of a breakdown of how the games are going to be played. All 92 are going to be live on TV in the UK. So 64 games are going to be played broadcasted on Sky Sports. 39 are going to be paid games, and then the other 25 are going to be free games. So basically free to air on the Sky Pick channel, which is good of Sky, very, very good of Sky. Another batch will be going to BT, so you've got 20 games on BT, so a reasonable amount of games there. Amazon have got 4 games, so if you remember from earlier on the season, they've had 2 lots of fixtures, if you like, in terms of sort of a whole round of fixtures earlier on this season. It's their debut season of broadcasting Premier League games. It's gone quite well actually, so they've got 4 games, and then BBC have actually got 4 games as well. So this is the first time that BBC will be airing live Premier League games. They've obviously done Match of the Day since the Premier League started, and they've obviously done FA Cup games, etc. like that. So that'd be interesting to see how BBC get on with that. I believe Gary Lineker will be hosting the shows, the BBC shows. Be interesting to see if it goes quite well, if the BBC think actually this could be something that we could do further down the line. So whenever the next broadcasting contract comes into play, will they sort of bid for it? That'd be interesting to see. So like I said, guys, Project Restart, Premier League start, I'm absolutely buzzing. Just in sport in general, as everything seems to be coming back. We had golf yesterday, and there's tennis coming back, and now obviously the Premier League as well. So there's 2 games that we've rescheduled because of the League Cup final. So the first of those is Aston Villa versus Sheffield United, which is going to be live on Sky Sports at 6 PM on Wednesday the 17th of June. So a few days from now. You've got Dean Smith versus Wilder. The first thing I want to mention is with Dean Smith, his father passed away from COVID-19 a little while ago. He contracted the virus. So condolences to him and his family, obviously. But Aston Villa are in the relegation zone at the moment. If they win this game in hand, they go outside the relegation zone. So the incentive, they can't have a greater incentive than that. That is a massive incentive. And also from like Dean Smith's point of view, and even the whole team and the squad, what's happened with Dean Smith's father passing away, that might galvanise the group even more and have a more of a motivation to get out of this relegation fight and hopefully stay in the division. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out for Aston Villa. In terms of Sheffield, they're fighting for European positions. They obviously have this game in hand as well, so if they win this game they go up to 5th above Manchester United. And as it stands, because Manchester City have a European ban, although they're going to be appealing it, they would be, if they win this game, they will be in the Champions League positions, virtually of obviously the ban. But like I said, it's still in the appeals process. I'm not sure how far down the line that is. So there's an incentive there for Sheffield United as well. And obviously with their form and stuff, they've been fantastic this season, a breath of fresh air with the sort of overlapping centre backs and playing sort of 3 at the back or 5 at the back as well. So it's been really good to watch. Next game then we've got Manchester City versus Arsenal, Wednesday the 17th of June. That's an 8 PM kickoff again on Sky Sports. So you've got Pep versus Arteta, you've got the General versus the Apprentice. This is the first time since Arteta left Manchester City that they'll be coming against each other. So it'll be interesting to see actually how Arteta's team sort of compares against Pep. And obviously Pep's team is way further down the journey, whereas Arsenal was very early in their sort of journey under Arteta's managerial position. In terms of Manchester City, so obviously they're in Champions League position. They're second in the league. They probably need 3 or 4, maybe 3 or 4 wins to guarantee Champions League position for next season. Obviously, depending on the Champions League appeal, whether it goes with them or against them. So they've also got the FA Cup quarter-final to play away to Newcastle, and also they've still in the Champions League. Now the Champions League, no one knows if that's actually concretely going to happen, because if you've got to bear in mind, if you don't know what countries allow people to go fly in, and obviously if the UK I think they are allowing people back in, but then you've got a quarantine for people, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. But they were 2-1 up against Real Madrid away from home as well, so it's a brilliant win at the Camp Nou. So it'd be quite ironic actually if City go and win the Champions League, but then they get banned, which obviously I don't want them to win the Champions League, but I still want them to get banned. So that's just my personal view, as you can tell over here. Sorry. In terms of Sergio Aguero, so he raised some concerns about the pandemic, which is totally understandable. There's going to be a bit of a theme here because there's going to be mentioned sort of plenty of players and even a few managers and stuff that have suffered or have had concerns of COVID-19. So, but he has returned to training with Manchester City, so he seems on board as it stands at the moment. In terms of Arsenal, they're also fighting for European positions. They have been knocked out of Europa League, so they haven't got to worry about that at the end of the season if that does come into play. They also have a quarter-final game in the FA Cup against Sheffield United away from home, I believe. So that adds another element to sort of their push for Champions League positions, or certainly European positions, should I say. One other thing to sort of note as well, David Luiz's contract runs out at the end of this season, so whether Arsenal want to renew his contract or if David Luiz, if he wants to stay, there has been mooted in the papers and on social media that he does want to go back to Benfica, where it's sort of where he started his career in European League, certainly anyway. So watch this space on that one, I think. And then we go to the Friday night. So we've got Norwich versus Southampton, Friday the 19th of June, 6 PM kickoff on the Sky Sports Pick channel. So you've got Daniel Farke versus Ralph Hasenhüttl. Now, first thing to mention here with Norwich, they had a player test positive for COVID-19 on the 12th of this month. So that will rule that player out for that game against Southampton because of the 7-day self-isolation period that player has to now go through. Which is obviously advised from the government, he will now miss that game. That player has not been. The player hasn't come out himself on social media or anything like that and said it's me. The club haven't said that either. A couple of reasons I think they've done that. One, from private and a personal issue from the player's point of view. Maybe he just doesn't want to declare that, which is fair enough, absolutely fine. But also, because that player is going to be missing the game, they don't want to give any advantage to Southampton in terms of team news. You know, if this player could be, for example, someone crucial like Pukki or Krul, and all of a sudden, that gives Southampton an advantage in terms of their preparation. So I think it's a smart decision for Norwich not to mention anything. In terms of obviously their league position, they're bottom of the table. They're on 21 points. They're 6 points off 16th in the league, I believe. So they have got a couple of nice home fixtures here. So this game here with against Southampton, and then the next game is at home to Everton. So 2 definitely winnable games. And if they do manage to pick back-to-back wins, all of a sudden they're right. I mean, they're not out of it now, but they're right in the mix. You expect other teams to pick up points as well. So it just drags them into it in amongst everyone else, and it'll be again massive incentive for Daniel Farke's team. Southampton, on the other hand, they are sitting 7 points above the relegation zone. They probably need 2 wins to be safe to sort of head towards the 40-point mark. Just want to mention something about Ralph Hasenhüttl. Actually, he's done brilliantly to sort of galvanise a group and sort of maybe not remotivate them, because remotivate is not the right word. But after they had that demolishment earlier on in the season to Leicester at home 9-0 or 0-9, should I say, they've done fantastically well to sort of go back to the drawing board and pick up loads and loads of W's, and a lot of that is down to sort of Danny Ings' form. He scored a lot of goals, but not only him. There's obviously the team that's done really, really well with Højbjerg and Ward-Prowse in particular. Ward-Prowse, I think, could play for a top 6 club. I think he's very good technique, works really, really hard, understands the game, good age, British player. I think he could go to one of the top 6 definitely. But anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked too much on him. One other thing to sort of note with Southampton, Ralph Hasenhüttl has extended his contract until 2024, so that's good news for Southampton fans that may be looking at more the long-term project. That takes me to the biggest game of the weekend in my eyes, as being a Manchester United fan. So we've got Spurs versus Manchester United, Friday the 19th of June, 8:15 PM on Sky Sports. You've got Josie versus Solskjaer. Obviously, on the reverse fixture of this, United won the game. Which was Mourinho's first time back at Old Trafford. Although this is not at Old Trafford, he'd be looking for a bit of revenge, no doubt. On top of that, obviously both of them will be fighting for European positions, in particular Champions League positions. So if you were to create a scenario here, Man United win the game, they go 7 points clear with 8 games to go of Spurs, and that put them firmly in the driving seat in terms of dispatching Spurs, if you like. Obviously, you reverse it and Spurs win it, then it's absolutely game on again, and that goes without saying, really. But in terms of players' availability, so both clubs have probably benefited from this period. Spurs probably more so, with Harry Kane, absolute world-class player, loves scoring goals. He's got that passion for just striking the ball and hitting the back of the net. So he's back, and also he's the vice captain as well. You've got Sonny, he's back, Bergwijn's back, Sissoko's back. So a lot of key players back from injury, because they all are injured pre-COVID. One other thing to note with Spurs as well, again it's down with the COVID sort of theme. They had an in-house 11v11 game, but then prior to that they announced that one of their players tested positive for COVID-19. Now, just judging from the pictures and stuff I've read online on social media and stuff, the 2 players that were missing from the game were Lo Celso and Lamela. So, putting 2 and 2 together, you'd probably say one of those other players that tested positive for COVID-19. Now, I'm not sure about the time frame when that was, so I'm not sure if that player's going to miss the game against United or not, but certainly it's just something to sort of mention. Especially with Lo Celso, because he was coming into some really strong form. Actually, he was becoming a more of an influential player for Spurs, and a bit of a fan's favourite as well. So he will certainly be a loss if it was him. In terms of Manchester United, they are in the Champions League, but obviously, they're in the Europa League, but we don't know what's happening with that at the moment. They're also in the quarter-final of the FA Cup, so they've got games there potentially to sort of navigate through as well. They're away to Norwich. And they've also got some key players back, the likes of Pogba and Rashford as well. So if they can hit the ground running, then United will have a fantastic chance of reaching their goal for the season, which would have been top 4, no doubt. One of the things as well I want to note about Manchester United as well, they were in really, really good form pre-COVID. I believe 11 games unbeaten, won 9, drawn 2 in all competitions, and kept maybe 8 or 9 clean sheets in that period. So it'd be interesting to see, what Manchester United come back. Is it the Manchester United, just before COVID sort of kicked in, or would it be the Manchester United from the beginning of the season? Obviously, touch wood, it's just the former. Sorry, should I say? Moving on to Watford versus Leicester. So you've got Nigel Pearson versus Brendan Rodgers. So Watford have done pretty well since Nigel Pearson's come in. They had that initial new manager bounce, had some really good games, picked up lots of points. Then they had a bit of a dip, and then just maybe 2 or 3 games prior to COVID-19 kicking into play, they had again picked up some form, beating Liverpool in that period as well. So Nigel Pearson will certainly be looking for continuing that form pre-COVID. There was 3 members of staff that actually tested positive for coronavirus at Watford as well. So I'm not sure what the situation is. I'm sure, I'd rather not say. I'm not sure what the situation is, whether they're back amongst the group or not. On top of that, Troy Deeney shared some concerns on a podcast he did before the lads went back to training, explaining that he didn't want to sort of go back to an environment where there's lots of people, albeit they've reduced the quantity of people, but still there's lots of bodies about, knowing full well that he just had a newborn, and the newborn was having sort of breathing difficulties, should I say, sorry. And so he didn't want to bring anything back to the home, which is totally understandable. No one's going to hold that against him at all, especially someone with Troy Deeney's sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of love for the club and the affinity he has with the club as well. So I don't think anyone's going to hold that against him. And then with Leicester, Brendan Rodgers actually, he suffered from COVID-19 as well, but he's absolutely fine now. He mentioned in an interview a couple of weeks back that he had it, but he's fine now. And obviously they're sitting in 3rd in the league at the moment as well, so they probably need another 3 to 4 wins and to secure certainly European positions, but if not Champions League positions as well. And they picked up a good win before the break, beating Aston Villa 4-0. So they are coming back on a high, if you like. Moving on to Bournemouth versus Crystal Palace. So it's Eddie Howe versus Roy Hodgson. You got a young and an old one. Bournemouth are currently sitting in the relegation zone, so they really need to go on a strong run to avoid the relegation. I believe they've got 4 of the top 6 to play still out of their 9 games, which is a big chunk, and that's a mixture of home and away. But they do have a couple of long-term players back from injury. So you've got Simon Francis, he's back, who's I believe he's a club captain, and then you've got David Brooks, who was a breath of fresh air last season in his debut season, and hasn't kicked a minute of football this season just through injuries, ankle injuries I believe it was. So potentially that could give Bournemouth a bit of a boost going into these last sort of 9 games. And then you've got Palace on the other side, sitting comfortably mid-table. They're probably 1 win away from that elusive 40 point mark. So they've got a really outside chance of finishing the European position as well, but everything's got to go their way in terms of other teams losing and them going probably unbeaten between now and the end of the season. But I've no doubt that Roy and Brad Livingston will, along with, a lot of their senior pros. You've got Gary Cahill, Joel Ward, Scott Dan, James McCarthy, MacArthur, the captain Milihojevic as well. A lot of senior pros there, so they would know exactly how to sort of be motivated for this period. They're not just turning up because they have to turn up. So they won't allow the standards to drop, no doubt about that. And then we're moving on to Brighton versus Arsenal. So Brighton, they sit 2 points above the relegation zone. They sit 15th in the league as well. And they have quite a few of the big boys to play at home. And traditionally, since Brighton have been in the Premier League, they've had really good form and results against the so-called Big Six, picking up a lot of W's. I can remember them at least beating Man United once, Arsenal maybe once or twice, and a few others as well. So they, it's important that there was a lot of talk sort of a few weeks back that a lot of the games we played in neutral venues, One of the top gaffers at Brighton said they didn't want to do that, and there'd be a massive sort of massive bit of leveller, if you like, for every opposition that's coming to the Amex. You know, although they haven't got the fans in the stadium, it's still the home comforts, the dressing room, the size of the pitch, you know, all them kind of things, they all play a part. One thing that's quite interesting I found as well, that the club have encouraged all the fans, or they've messaged the fans, whether through email or put it on their social media, etc., and said they can have cardboard cutouts of the fans' sort of faces. So what I'm envisaging is, if you get a cardboard cutout of your face, so say for example myself, and then they would stick it on a chair in the stadium, so it looks like the players look like they've got people watching them, if that makes sense. It's all of a cost of £20 as well, so I'm not sure what to make of that. I don't know if it's just a money-making scheme as well, I'm not sure. As well, and also Brighton as well, they've voiced their concerns. Obviously, you know, no one's going to have fans, but they're leaning towards sort of wanting to play fan chants as well. So they might be doing that as well. So they're really thinking outside the box, what can benefit them as a group of players and a club. And then with Arsenal, we've just obviously touched on them already. You know, if they do go on to beat Manchester City in the first game, and then bouncing into this game here, and all of a sudden if they win this game as well, back-to-back away wins in the Prem, which is no mean feat either, even for a club like Arsenal. All of a sudden they'll fancy their chances not just for European positions but for Champions League as well. So again, massive incentive for Arsenal there as well. Then we move on to Manchester City versus Burnley. I touched on Manchester City plenty already, so I won't touch on them anymore. But Burnley, they have no relegation fears. They sit inside the top 10. They also have an outside chance of European positions as well. And I think Burnley must be super happy with what Sean Dyche has done under the restrictions he's had, i.e. sort of the budget size, and also like just the recruitment of players. You know, they can't go and sign big players. They haven't got a big stadium to bring in big revenues through gate receipts, etc. as well. So under sort of a shoestring budget, they've done fantastically well. One little note that I'm quite surprised, this has sort of made the news a few days ago, but because Sean Dyche is sort of a man, if you like, he's a proper man's man. You know, if he had a problem with someone, he'd face it face to face, whether it be a player, a cleaner, and one of the senior people above him. He would just face it face, you know, head to head, face to face kind of thing. But apparently he's come out and said, I'm not sure if it was in a podcast he did or just on a chat show that he was on sort of during this period, apparently he's unhappy with the hierarchy because they don't want to extend certain players' contracts. So I touched on a load of players earlier, and I mentioned actually 5 Burnley players. So Westwood, Hendrick, Bardsley, Lennon and Joe Hart. Now the first two certainly they play week in, week out. Bardsley's 50-50, although he's probably about 34, 35 now, but he does come in and play a reasonable amount of games along with Loughton. And you've got Aaron Lennon, who's more of an impact player these days. And then you've got Joe Hart, although he's second choice goalkeeper. You know, if something happens to Popey, he's in. Well, he potentially might not be in because the club's not willing to sort of extend these players' contracts. So, which I can understand it from Sean Dyche's point of view. So, if these 5 players don't extend their contracts, all of a sudden, one, they're going to have a weaker starting 11. They're going to therefore have a weaker bench. But also, like from a competition point of view, in terms of in-house at Burnley training ground, if you've got 5 less bodies there and you've got 5 youngsters, it's not the same. They need that high-end competition, especially at that elite level in the Premier League. And on top of that as well, if these 5 players don't sign, and then all of a sudden Burnley pick up, Chris Wood picks up a hamstring injury, then you've got Corky does his hamstring as well, and then Popey does his, breaks a finger or something. All of a sudden they're down to the bare bones, and it's I can understand it from Burnley's point of view. And on top of that, they normally roll with quite a small squad, quite a tight knit group as well. So I'd like to think this would get sorted in house before the 23rd of June. So Newcastle versus Sheffield United. Newcastle sitting in a relatively solid position in the league as well, 8 points above the relegation zone. Again, probably need 2 wins to secure their status in the division for another season. This it's interesting as well with all the rumours about potentially new owners coming in. You know, Mark Ashley's been wanting to sell the club for a number of years, just hasn't been able to find a suitable buyer that's matched his price, if you like. And it seems like this Saudi owner, who quite a rich person I believe, is willing to pay the 330 million for the club. So if that goes through, I don't think it's going to go through anytime soon. I'm not hearing any reports that's going to happen sort of in the immediate future. It might be something that's sort of 2, 3, 4 months down the line. But obviously, if that'd be interesting as well, because if they get new owners in, do they see a Manchester City project? Do they see a Chelsea project in terms of throwing a lot of money at it? With a top sort of quality manager as well. I mean, there's been lots of rumours with Pochettino possibly going there because he's available on the market. You've also got Allegri, the ex-Juventus manager, he's on the market. So there's two outstanding managers there that potentially could fill that void. And if I was the Saudi owners and I wanted those two, I'll sell it to them. It's like, here's a bit of a war chest for you. Here's 250 million for you in the 1st January. You're going to get another 70 million, 100 million or whatever in December if you need it. Let's go in, at least fight for the European positions this season, as in the 2021 season, and then maybe as they're it's building steps, isn't it? So you kind of after sort of maybe 2-3 years, you probably think, okay, possibly in European positions. Then maybe 2-3 years after that, then Champions League positions potentially. If they keep adding quality players to the group, I can see that absolutely happening, because Newcastle have a fantastic fan base. They have a very loyal crowd. They turn up regardless if they're. I remember in the Championship, they still have 55,000 turning up every week or every 2 weeks. So yeah, they've obviously got a brilliant stadium as well. So yeah, watch your space with that one, I think. Although I would like to see Steve Bruce been given an opportunity with a lot of cash. I don't think that will happen, if I'm totally honest. But yeah, watch your space definitely with him. And then really touched on Sheffield. Obviously, if they go and beat Villa and then they go and win this game, they're going to be really, really fancy them chances of finishing the top 4, let alone the sort of the European positions. Moving on to Aston Villa versus Chelsea. So again, Villa's second game. Smith versus Lampard. Again, reversing it to Aston Villa. Back-to-back home games. I think if you ask Dean Smith right now, 4 points, would you take it? I think he'll take that. Considering, I know he's got 2 home games, but I think he'll still take that, just because one, they'll be unbeaten in the first 2 games. They picked up a W, and there's a bit of momentum there as well. And you probably think they'll be outside the relegation zone, although it's not mathematically possible. Just often depend on other results going their way. And then in terms of sort of Chelsea, they currently sit 4th in the league. They're in the Champions League still, but they did lose heavily in the first leg to Bayern Munich at home 3-0. So they're probably all but out in the Champions League. But like I alluded to a few other times in the show already, that we don't know when the Europa League and the Champions League games are going to be taking place because of, obvious reasons really. And they're also in their FA Cup quarter-final. They're actually away to high-flying Leicester, so that'll be interesting as well. So you've got another element there that both of them are vying for Champions League positions, but also fighting for that effectively a semi-final position at Wembley as well. So that adds to it. N'Golo Kante as well, is there something to sort of worth mentioning as well. So he had concerns about coming back to training. Actually, he didn't come back to training when the rest of the group did, in sort of small groups of 4 and 5. So just to add a bit of weight to sort of his argument, his brother died of a heart attack back in 2018, and I think a little while before that or a little while after, he collapsed whilst he was on international duty as well. So he's just purely thinking it from a family point of view and a health point of view. He doesn't want to take any chances. You can totally understand his point of view. He has since returned to the group. I believe it was this last week he joined the group. So I think more as sort of the numbers decrease in terms of what you see, in the daily briefing from the Prime Minister and Matt Hancock, etc. That would help. But also, I think just seeing the lads, that will also make him feel more comfortable. Knowing that he's getting tested twice a week as well, that's going to make him feel more comfortable. So I think as the sort of days go on, the weeks go on, everyone's going to feel more comfortable in that environment, knowing that all the precautions and the safety measurements are in place. We're sticking with Chelsea because there's a lot to sort of mention here. They seem to be quite active in the transfer market, and certainly amongst sort of the speculation side of things. So they've agreed a £54 million, agreed a fee of £54 million in principle with RB Leipzig for the services of Timo Werner. I believe that's his release clause. I don't know how long that lasts. There is some rumours saying that it lasts as of 15th or 16th of June. So the 15th is today. So it might be today, it might be tomorrow, or the 16th. Or in some reports I've read it's the 15th of July. So depending who you believe, would indicate what source you believe really. And also on top of that, they've also declared some interest in Ben Chilwell. I've actually gone a bit further and said apparently they're their number one choice in terms of signings this summer, who they want to bring in. Now, the fee I'm hearing potentially it could cost Chelsea is £75 million, which probably in this market isn't a lot of money. And on top of that, he is English as well, which adds a bit of inflation to the market as well. So they're also interested in the young, exciting, attacking sort of flair midfielder in Kai Havertz. So he plays for Bayer Leverkusen. Played quite a few games for them as well. Looks really, really exciting. I'm not sure if you guys have seen him with the Bundesliga games, but he's done quite well. Apparently, amongst the Chelsea community, Antonio Rudiger, if you are believing these reports that he's interested in signing for Chelsea, but Antonio Rudiger has played a big part in sort of persuading him. Obviously you've got the German link there as well, so that might be something that makes him feel more comfortable coming into an environment that he knows someone that speaks the language as well. And then on top of that, they've already agreed the signing of Ajax winger Hakim Ziyech for 33.4 million. So potentially Chelsea could be spending a lot of money, and I don't know about any outgoings that could be happening as well. And obviously this all might not materialise, but you know, if you're listening to all the figures that potentially could cost for each of the players and then combine that together, they could do some serious business in the market. And you've got to bear in mind as well, because I think the market will be different for a lot of clubs, certainly in the Premier League and even below that, and across other leagues, other European leagues as well. But Chelsea did have a European ban. They've not signed anyone for the last 2 windows, so they might have a load of cash ready to go. So that might make it a bit easier for them to purchase players in terms of a negotiation point of view, because those players, the players that they're looking to sign, the clubs that they play for, might be short of cash and they might need a bit of a cash flow, might have cash flow problems. So all of a sudden, you know, that Ben Chilwell deal, for example, we're hearing 75 million. You know, I was hearing that maybe 2 months ago. That all of a sudden might go down to 60 million because Leicester might be struggling for cash. So interesting again. Watch this space with Chelsea. Very exciting times if you're a Chelsea fan going into the window. Moving on to West Ham versus Wolves. This is a massive game for West Ham. Again, it goes to about momentum is spoken about a lot in football, in any sport really. So if they can pick up a W in that first game home to Wolves, you know, that builds that momentum, that confidence, that belief that, I mean, they're not in the relegation zone, but they could quite easily be in it after the first game if, you know, the result goes against them. So David Moyes is, if you didn't know already, has got a massive job on his hands. In terms of Wolves, there's 2 ways looking at it for Wolves. Obviously they're fighting for European positions, in particular probably the Champions League, but they would absolutely take the Europa League position, is what they had last season. And speaking of the Europa League, they're still in the Europa League. I believe they won their first leg. I can't be certain on that. So they've got another avenue into potentially getting into the Champions League if they go on to win that. And again, all dependent on the resumption of European football. But also, like, if you cast your minds back to the beginning of the season, they had to go through qualifying rounds just to get into the Europa League group stage. So they would have played a lot more games. They don't have a big squad. Nuno doesn't like a big squad. Doesn't rotate the team a lot either. So maybe this sort of pandemic has come at a good time for them to recharge mentally and physically, and then go again for this sort of nine game burst, if you like. So it'd be interesting to see how Wolves come out, and whether they go on a strong run or not, I'm not sure. But I've got a sneaky suspicion they will, but it'd be interesting to see how they get on. And that takes us to the last game of game week 30. And it's a Merseyside derby, so you've got Everton versus Liverpool, Ancelotti versus Klopp. Now, first thing to sort of note here is, I just want to make sure I get this quote correct. So Liverpool's Ground Safety Advisory Group have deemed this game safe to play at Goodison, despite concerns of fans' congregation around the ground. So that's absolutely really positive news for probably both clubs. There was talks of this game being played at Southampton, which neither of them probably would want to. Certainly from Everton's point of view, it's a home fixture. They want to play at home despite no fans being there. They want to feel comfortable in their surroundings in terms of the layout of the pitch, in terms of the sizing and stuff, changing rooms, the journey to the home game, all them sort of things. They all add up. And then from Liverpool's point of view, they potentially could win the league. If results go their way. So what I mean by that is, if Manchester City lose against Arsenal in their first game and Liverpool go to Goodison Park and win, they win the Prem. So I'm just letting that sink in because that hurts. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that too much, but all I will say is that Liverpool absolutely deserve to win the Premier League. There's no doubt about that. I wouldn't have liked them being given the title because I wouldn't see that as being fair personally. They deserve to win it, but you've got to go and win it. So again, glad the season's obviously Project Restart's happening, so they actually can go and win it. There still might be an asterisk next to the title of the 1920 season, but nevertheless they're going to win the league, and it will be Liverpool's first Premier League title win as well, adding to the likes of Man United, Chelsea, Man City, Blackburn, Leicester, Arsenal. I don't think I've missed anyone out. And it'll be their first title win in 30 years. So that's a long period, and being a United fan as well, touch wood, it doesn't go for that long for Man United either, because I'm sure you asked many Liverpool fans back 30 years ago, they would have never thought 30 years before they're going to win another title. So yeah, there's big incentive for both clubs there. Obviously Everton are going to be trying their damn hardest, one because it's a derby, they want to win it, but also just they can prevent their biggest rivals from winning the league for the very first time, the Premier League for the very first time. They're going to do it. So yeah, very, very interesting to see how that sort of plays out. One sort of final thing to note with Liverpool, they've obviously done fantastically well, not only this season, but if you rewind back into last season as well, I think they only lost one game the whole of last season. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that is correct. But also not just domestically, obviously in terms of the Champions League, they've reached two finals, back-to-back finals. They've won one and lost one. They've won the FIFA World Cup Championships as well. So they absolutely, deserve to win the league, but also, they're absolutely flying in terms of world status as well, because they're winning a lot of trophies now under Jurgen Klopp. So yeah, guys, this is episode pilot finished. So yeah, absolutely buzzing with this. Let me know what you think about this, and if you want to see more of this sort of stuff, then I'm happy to do it. Again, leave a like, leave a comment. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then please do so, and then we'll see everyone on the next episode.